Some folks just don't know when to stop. Take Lynn, for example. She's the head of the local neighborhood council here in Birchwood Glen, and a real piece of work. It was midday, bright and quiet, when she stormed up to my driveway, shouting like I'd committed a felony. Why? Because I had the audacity to close the new gate I'd installed on my own property. That was apparently enough to send her into a full meltdown, kicking at it, yelling about community standards. I just stood there, calm, hands in my pockets, holding onto a small document that I knew would flip the situation on its head when the time was right. Let's rewind. A couple of months back, I moved into this sleepy suburb outside Charlotte after inheriting my grandfather's home. I'd spent nearly a decade in software up north and was ready to put down roots and invest in something that felt real. Real estate seemed smart, so I picked up 2 rentals on the same street. One of them a tidy little place on Linden Drive that I bought from a retiree heading into assisted living. I hadn't even met the current tenant yet. Back at my granddad's place, I decided to put in a simple black gate. Nothing flashy, just a clean install that matched the fence. I pulled permits, followed city code, even reviewed the neighborhood association's rules before getting started. It was all above board. But none of that mattered to Lynn Cartwright. Just as I was tightening the last screw, I heard the unmistakable click of heels. I turned to see Lynn, mid-40s, tense posture, buns so tight it looked painful, storming down the sidewalk like she was leading a raid. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't ask. She declared, "I'm Lynn Cartwright, chair of the Birchwood Glen Civic Committee. I need to inspect this unauthorized barrier." "Ma'am, this is my private property," I replied evenly. I followed every regulation. "You're welcome to see the permits." But Lynn wasn't there for logic. "Permits don't matter," she barked. "This violates Birchwood Harmony guidelines. Remove it, or there will be consequences." She whipped out her phone and started snapping photos like she was collecting evidence for court. The whole thing would have been laughable if she weren't so committed to the role. I let her rant. Then, without a word, I calmly closed the gate in her face. The latch clicked. Silence. She froze, then lost it. "Open this gate now," she shrieked, rattling the metal like she was trying to rip it off the hinges. As the head of this community, I have the right to inspect any property. Neighbors peeked out through blinds. Some even stepped outside to watch. I slipped my hand into my pocket and felt the folded lease agreement for 1632 Linden Drive, the one I'd bought weeks ago. I glanced down at the tenant's name. Lynn Cartwright. That's right. Miss Cartwright, the neighborhood tyrant, wasn't just the head of the council. She was also my tenant. This was going to get interesting. The very next morning, I walked outside to find neon orange violation flyers plastered on everything. My gate, my fence, even my trash bin. They all screamed unauthorized structure, fine, $500. But the kicker? They were riddled with typos. Illegal instead of illegal. Immediate spelled wrong. Neighborhood with no... I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. I started photographing every single notice. I even framed the funniest one and taped it back up with a handwritten sign beneath. Art installation. Council grammar in action. That afternoon, my neighbor Walt came by. He's in his 50s, ex-electric company, dry sense of humor. He glanced at the flyers and snorted. "Welcome to the Lynn Club," he said. She did the same thing to me when I swapped my porch lights for LEDs. Claimed it broke the neighborhood's visual theme. Whatever that means. Apparently, nearly everyone on our street had some war story. Mailbox paint disputes, grass length citations, even barking dog complaints. But nobody had ever pushed back. Until now. Inspired, I printed extra copies of her misspelled violations and decorated my fence with them. Soon, it became the street's latest attraction. Kids came by with their parents to laugh. Walt called it a comedy gallery. Even the mail carrier asked if he could take photos. Lynn? Not amused. By noon, she'd called an emergency council meeting. Walt tipped me off. "She's rallying her loyalists, Rick and that retired librarian, Helen," he said. "You should probably show up." So I did, armed with my lease documents and the HOA bylaws. When I arrived at Lynn's place that evening, she looked like she was ready to argue in front of the Supreme Court. Papers in hand, eyes locked on mine. "I didn't expect you here," she said stiffly. "I wouldn't miss it," I replied. She launched into a speech about order and regulations. Then she called for a vote to uphold my fine. That's when I interrupted. According to your own bylaws, I said, calmly placing documents on the coffee table, you need at least 7 out of 12 board members present to vote on fines. There are 3 of you here. She stammered. Rick looked confused. Helen just raised an eyebrow. And as for the gate, I added, here are the permits. City certified, fully compliant. Lynn's face twisted. This is an emergency situation. I nodded. Yes, an emergency over a gate that doesn't block anything and has a fire-safe latch. Defeated but still full of rage, Lynn stood up. You'll regret this. That night, I installed security cameras. Subtle, legal, and pointed at my property only. I started logging everything, dates, times, what she said, who was there. It didn't take long. She escalated. Garbage thrown on my lawn. Dog poop left near my porch. At 2 a.m., I caught her and Rick on camera smearing something gross on my mailbox. That footage was gold. Neighbors began opening up. The Johnsons had been forced to remove their kids' playhouse. Then Gwen's got fined for planting sunflowers. Even sweet Mrs. Everett, who just wanted to paint her shutters, had been reprimanded. But things changed. We started talking, really talking. Walt created a neighborhood chat group. Stories poured in. Lynn's control was slipping. Then came her full-blown meltdown. She discovered my cameras, flew into a rage, and came at them with a broom. Screaming about privacy and spying, she smashed one. The next day, she took it even further, baseball bat in hand. She trashed my garden. That was it. I showed the footage to the police. Officer Gomez, who'd already dealt with her antics, took one look and asked, "Do you want to press charges?" Not yet. Instead, I invited Lynn to a public neighborhood meeting she had called herself, hoping to rally people against me. Instead, she walked into a room full of neighbors holding phones and documents, and I came with a projector. They watched as I showed her nighttime vandalism, the threats, the garden rampage. Then I revealed the kicker, that I was her landlord, that all her rage had been aimed at the man who literally owned her house. Lynn fell apart right there, shouting, crying, explaining how she lost her family, her marriage, and this council was all she had left. I just wanted to matter, she whispered. I told her she had 2 options: resign, vacate the property peacefully, or face eviction and charges. She chose to resign. The neighborhood changed overnight. Laughter returned. So did porch lights, flowers, and kids' playhouses. I replaced my mailbox and fence, helped organize regular community meetings, and created a better tenant screening process. 2 months later, I got a letter. It was from Lynn, a genuine apology. She was getting help, she said. She included a check to cover the damages. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. And that gate, still there, quiet, harmless, just like the street it stands on. In the end, what started as a gate dispute became a turning point for the entire neighborhood. We didn't just deal with a toxic HOA president. We reclaimed our street from fear and silence. Lynn's downfall reminded everyone that power misused never lasts, and standing your ground with facts, patience, and community support makes all the difference. Birchwood Glen is now a place where people talk, laugh, and help each other instead of hiding behind rules. The drama is over, but the lessons stuck. Document everything. Know your rights, and never underestimate the impact of calm persistence. That once contentious gate now stands as a quiet symbol of change, reminding us how one person's courage can inspire a whole community to unite.